Okay, we're at Via Grimauldi, which now is a park set up in memorial. Very similar to if you've ever been to a concentration camp in Europe and things like that. But this was a place of a prison, a detention center for torture and death. And during Pinochet's years in power, it was kind of secretive. People didn't know what was going on here. And the prisoners were able to kind of figure out where they were, not because they could see anything, because they were always blindfolded whenever they were taken out, but through kind of smelling, and they could hear planes from the airport, because this had once been a place where leftists had come to discuss and talk about politics and everything very freely, but the military took it over and turned it into a torture center. This is just kind of a model of what it was like, and there's some pictures, little drawings of some of the things that happened to people. They have a bed here with no mattress where you were, hooked up to electricity.
Like a car battery.
Like a car battery. People locked together in little closets. And over here we've got like a net, like what you use to tie down things in a car bed. They would put people in there and tie them down and maybe beat them while they were under the net like that. And again, you were always blindfolded wherever you went, so you never really got to see or have real human contact. But ironically enough, there were still gardens here and roses, so people really remember smelling the roses when they were taken from place to place. So few people came out of here, obviously alive. But, the ones that did, unfortunately we didn't get to meet with any of them, but they come here and give tours and are still very emotional. Here in the center was a parking lot, and apparently they used to just, hit people with cars. Yeah, this is certainly a really very emotional place to be, and just to try and imagine what actually went on here in this
bench I'm sitting on is an actual bench that on which the prisoners were placed. It's something really incredible. This marker here says, it's a place of torture cells and prisoners. And then it says a quotation, and one of the prisoners probably said this. It says, on this seat, solidarity, loyalty, and companionship were felt. And it's
this little house here was actually a torture device. You would have maybe 4 or 5 people in here, so no one could actually sit down. One person could sit down at a time.
It's 1 square meter, so that's 3 feet by 3 feet.
Yeah, so it's a little wooden house. And they actually called these little houses, they had more than one here at the time, they named them after projects that the socialist president had put in place, basically, inexpensive housing for the poor. And they named these sarcastically after those housing projects that they had tried to do.
This building here is a replica because the military destroyed it, and these markers are where other similar buildings.
One thing that our guide and a lot of the people that are working on this place and everything are really focused on is kind of giving the deceased and the people that were tortured here and survived back their humanity. Because when you got here, you were just given a number. You weren't a person anymore. The military saw you just as a disease, as a cancer in society. But, obviously rape is the most dehumanizing act you can do to a woman. And, all these acts of torture. So here we had, this is where you were basically electrified, hooked up to a car battery. And our guide also said, these things are also very cheap. Unlike the Nazis who had kind of a whole industry going. It was really... They didn't spend much money on torturing people here. And then over here, this tree that you would be hanged, and they rarely killed people here. At least they didn't intend to. I'm sure people accidentally died through torture, but you were hanged more like being drawn and quartered in the Middle Ages. So you would be hung like your arms would be hung back, so it would be really excruciatingly painful. So this is just kind of the whole torture area, torture system that they had.
Rose Garden, and you have to remember, this place was a garden before it was a prison. It was a famous garden. It was one of the most famous gardens in all of Chile, and it was a place where high-class intellectuals would come, and they would discuss both the left and the right. They would come and talk about intellectual things. Pablo Neruda, who's the most famous poet in Chile, one of the most famous poets in all of Latin America. He came here and he read his poetry, and so many of the prisoners who were imprisoned here could tell where they were by the smell, because they had been here before, by the smell of the air, because the mountains, and it smells different from down in the city where there's a lot of pollution, and by the smell of the roses. And so there's a marking here that says the prisoners perceived the smell of the roses. And what's really amazing here is each one of these flowers represents a woman who was killed by the regime. So they have all these names and all these flowers representing the women who were killed. Okay, this is by far the most difficult part of being here. In this little building, they have actual pictures and personal effects that belong to people who were detained here. And just standing here, seeing these people, the faces, they're smiling and they look so nice, and they're just remember this one. They just look so nice, and this girl here, I mean, you would just wonder what they were thinking when the picture was taken and what happened to them afterwards. And it's been so difficult, because you keep thinking why, and I studied so much, and I know why all these things happen. We read several hundred pages about this and why it happened and how it happened and so on before we came, but sometimes why just isn't enough. Another good example, this woman was killed here. She was tortured and then they killed her. And they took the body in a plane and they put weights on the body and they put it in the ocean. So they threw the body out of the plane. Somehow the body the body separated from the weights, the body floated up and it landed on the beach. And it's got copies of news articles saying, dead woman found on the beach. And the military claimed, everybody was wondering how this woman died, and the military claimed that this woman had been killed by a jealous lover. So, personal effects of hers and sand from the beach where her body washed up. Okay, so we have two examples of their specific stories that they're telling. Here you've got this man named Carlos Alberto, and he was one of the guards. And at the time, military service was obligatory in Chile. It was conscription. Everyone had to join the military for at least a period of time. And this guard was 19 years old when he was doing his required military service, and he was nice to the prisoners, and I assume he gave them things, and he didn't hit them as hard or whatever. And his superiors found out, and they hung him up to a tree, and they made all the other prisoners beat him with a chain until he was, not the prisoners, excuse me, the guards. All the guards had to beat him with a chain, and they forced every single guard to participate to make him an example. And it says right in, so it has pictures of him as a child, and pictures of him, he looks like he's maybe 17. And here it says, doing his obligatory military service at 19 years old, the oath was never more honored. And then it quotes the oath that every soldier has to take. It says, I swear by God and by our flag to loyally serve my country, even if it's necessary to sacrifice my life in doing so. And it says, Carlos served his country and his Chilean brothers every time he helped a prisoner. And he gave his life doing this.